ALITA Battle Angel stars Rosa Salazar, Christoph Waltz, Jennifer Connelly, MAHERSHALA Ali and KEEAN Johnson. Cinematography is by Bill Pope and music is by JUNKIE XL, aka Tom Holkenborg. The movie was written by James Cameron, LAETA Kalogridis and Robert Rodriguez, based on the graphic novel by YUKITO Kishiro. ALITA is directed by Robert Rodriguez, the man who brought us From Dusk Till Dawn, Planet Terror and Spy Kids. What's the story? The year is 2563 and the Earth has taken a backward step since a war with the Martian colonies over 300 years ago. The well-to-do live in the last remaining floating city called Zolom, while the normal people try to eke out a living in the ruined Iron City below. Dr. Dyson Edo, played by Christoph Waltz, scavenges for robot parts in Iron City's junkyard underneath Zolom. He finds the head and shoulders of a cyborg girl, played by Rosa Salazar. To Edo's surprise, he discovers that the cyborg girl's brain is still alive. Edo quickly collects the cyborg's remaining parts and hurries home to fix her up. The cyborg girl wakes up in a comfy bed. She has been given hair and a beautifully crafted cyborg body. After an inquisitive look at herself in the mirror, she goes downstairs. Edo's surgery is downstairs. We see Edo and Nurse Gerhard, played by Idara Victor, attend to a patient with an artificial robot arm. As the patient has no money, he offers Edo some oranges as payment. From Nurse Gerhard's comments, we get the impression that Edo doesn't often get paid for his services. This demonstrates that Edo has a benevolent nature. The cyborg girl says hello. Edo introduces himself and Nurse Gerhard. Unfortunately, the cyborg girl remembers nothing, not even her own name. Edo wipes away the cyborg girl's tears, feeds her some oranges, and then names her ALITA. ALITA loves her new name. Edo takes ALITA on a tour of Iron City. ALITA is amazed at everything she sees and hears, the people, the languages, the music, the floating city of Zolom, and a video promo for the popular sport of motorball. ALITA is left outside a cafe while Edo goes next door to buy something. ALITA passes the time by sharing her sandwich with a small stray dog. A flyer blows across ALITA's path that warns of a serial killer on the loose. This serial killer is responsible for the murders of 6 women, and there is a 20,000 credit reward for the killer's kill or capture. While playing in the street with the dog, danger arrives in the form of a factory enforcer robot called a Centurion. ALITA instinctively drops into a fighting stance, but she is whisked out of the way at the last moment by a young man called Hugo, played by KEEAN Johnson. But ALITA isn't finished. She dives in between the legs of the Centurion in order to protect the small dog from being crushed. Hugo is impressed by ALITA's moves and by her cyborg body. Hugo recognises Edo's work instantly. At this moment, Edo returns. We learn from Edo that Hugo buys and sells robot parts, so they sometimes do business together. As Hugo leaves, ALITA repeats his name. She is clearly smitten on him. Later that night, one more woman falls victim to the serial killer. Just after this, ALITA witnesses Edo sneak back into the house dripping with blood and carrying a suitcase. This leads ALITA to the premature conclusion that Edo might be this mysterious serial killer. The next day, ALITA assists Edo with another patient. This patient has had his robot arms and legs stripped by some street punks called jackers. Edo warns ALITA that the streets are dangerous. He makes ALITA promise not to stay out after dark. Later that day, ALITA wanders around Iron City. She is stopped in the street by Edo's ex-wife, CHRISTOPH, played by Jennifer Connelly. It seems that CHRISTOPH has a particular interest in ALITA's cyborg body. Shortly after this, CHRISTOPH meets with Edo, and we then discover the reason for CHRISTOPH's interest in ALITA. ALITA has been given the body of Edo and CHRISTOPH's dead daughter, a body that CHRISTOPH thought had been disposed of long ago. CHRISTOPH is also a doctor. She asks Edo to work with her to create cyborg champions for the motorball games. CHRISTOPH used to live in Zolom, and she's prepared to do anything to get back there. CHRISTOPH believes that her benefactor, Vector, played by MAHERSHALA Ali, will be able to send her to Zolom if she makes him more motorball champions. Unfortunately, Edo refuses to work with CHRISTOPH because he's not interested in creating monsters. Meanwhile, ALITA meets up with Hugo. She watches Hugo and his friends playing a scrimmage, which is a street version of the motorball game. ALITA is given a pair of motorised rollerblades and asked to join in. Here we are introduced to Hugo's friends, Tanji, played by George Lendenborg Jr., and Kayome, played by Lana Condor. Tanji plays rough and knocks ALITA over so that he can score a point with the ball. However, ALITA is a quick learner. She returns to the game, beats Tanji to the ground, and scores a point. Once again, Hugo is impressed with ALITA's skills. On the way home, Hugo buys ALITA a bar of chocolate. ALITA is amazed at how wonderful chocolate tastes, and she declares it to be her favourite food. We also get our first look at the hunter warrior called Zapan, played by X-Grime. Alita is impressed by Zapan's sword. The next day, Hugo takes Alita to an abandoned church that has a great view of Zolom. Hugo's dream is to make enough money to get to Zolom, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Hugo explains that Alita has already seen Zolom, because the scrap in the junkyard comes from Zolom. Alita begins to think that she must not have been very important, just an insignificant girl thrown out with the rest of the garbage. Later that night, Alita follows Ido when he disappears into Iron City. Alita incorrectly presumes that Ido is about to kill a young woman, and she jumps in to stop him. However, Alita has misread the situation. Ido is actually a hunter warrior bounty hunter, and he was waiting for the serial killer to arrive. Unfortunately, there are 3 serial killers: Romo, played by Derek Mears, Nisiana, played by Elsa Gonzalez, and Gruishka, played by Jackie Earle Haley. All of these killers are cyborgs with fearsome weapons incorporated into their bodies. Ido does battle with Romo, but Alita steps in and kills Romo easily. In response, Nisiana attacks Alita, but Alita manages to kill Nisiana as well. Alita finally does battle with Gruishka. Alita manages to rip off Gruishka's arm. This causes Gruishka to retreat, but he promises revenge. Ido takes Nisiana's head to the factory and claims her bounty. Outside the factory, Alita tells Ido that a memory resurfaced during the fight. Alita remembered being in a battle on the moon. Alita wants answers, and she suspects that Ido knows more about her than he is letting on. Back home, Ido tells Alita about his daughter, who was also called Alita. Ido created Alita's cyborg body because his daughter had an illness that put her in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, Ido's daughter was killed by a rampaging motorball player, and so she never got to use the body. Ido registered as a hunter warrior so that he could hunt down the killer, but this brought no peace. Ido continues to be a hunter warrior because he feels guilty for creating monsters like the cyborg that killed his daughter. Ido shows Alita a schematic of her core. Alita's heart is an antimatter microreactor, which is lost technology from before the war. Ido concludes that Alita is over 300 years old. This news obviously comes as a bit of a shock to Alita. Later that night, Gruishka bursts into Chirin's penthouse, and he pleads for Chirin's help in rebuilding him. At first, Chirin is reluctant, but she is suddenly very interested when Gruishka mentions that it was Ido's cybergirl that caused his damage. Gruishka is taken to Chirin's laboratory and prepared for rebuilding. It is discovered that Gruishka has a telepresence chip that allows Zolom's overlord, Nova, played by Edward Norton, to take control of his body. Nova speaks through Gruishka. He tells Chirin and Vector that Alita knows the lost fighting art of Panzerkunst. Nova instructs Chirin to rebuild Gruishka so that he can kill Alita. Nova then repatches himself to talk through Vector. Nova tells Chirin that if she pleases him, he will send her to Zolom. Ido and Alita are confused when they learn that there is no bounty on Gruishka. They suspect that Gruishka is being protected by the system. Alita wants to register as a hunter warrior because she believes that another life and death situation may trigger more of her memories. However, Ido rejects the idea because it is too dangerous. Hugo takes Alita to the motorball games. Alita is fascinated by this violent and fast-moving game for cyborgs. Hugo is able to take Alita into the pits to see the players because he knows all the tuners. Hugo explains that the final champion gets to go to Zolom. Vector and Chirin are also at the game. They witness a player called Kanuba, played by Leonard Wu, use grind cutter fingers to slice apart an opponent. Chirin suggests to Vector that Gruishka could use these grind cutters. Later that night, Kanuba's winning celebrations are cut short when he is jacked by street punks, who remove his grind cutters. It turns out that Hugo and Tanji are the jackers. Vector pays Hugo and Tanji to deliver the grind cutters to Chirin. Vector then kills Kanuba for his arrogance because no one is greater than the game. The next day, Hugo drives Alita, Tanji and Koyomi outside the city. Hugo shows Alita a spaceship from the Battle of Zolom. It is hoped that seeing something from the past might trigger a memory in Alita. We learn from Tanji and Koyomi that the war known as the Fall was between Earth and the United Republics of Mars, or After the final battle, only Zolom remained. Alita is shown the remains of an spaceship in a lake. Intrigued, Alita jumps into the lake and she makes her way inside. Alita finds the command deck and, acting on instinct, she unlocks a secure area and finds a brand new cyborg body. Alita retrieves the body and leaves the ship. Alita takes the body back to Ido, but Ido refuses to put Alita inside the body. We find out that Ido has known all along what Alita is. Alita is an berserker, the most advanced cyborg weapon ever created. Ido refuses to unite Alita with her berserker body because he does not want Alita to have blood on her hands. Undaunted, Alita makes her way to the factory. She passes by a collection of Centurions and informs the robot clerk that she wants to register as a hunter warrior. Once certified, Alita and Hugo make their way to a hunter warrior bar downtown, Outside the bar, ALITA is greeted by the small dog she saved from the Centurion days before. ALITA cuddles the dog before she and Hugo go inside the bar. The dog slips inside unnoticed. Inside the bar, ALITA catches the attention of Zapan. Zapan is amused to find that ALITA has registered as a hunter warrior, and he introduces ALITA to various hunter warriors in the bar. Master Clive Lee, Screwhead, and McTeague, the dog master. Zapan shows off his sword, the legendary Damascus blade, forged before the fall by the ALITA ignores Zapan's jibes. She asks the hunter warriors to join her in defeating Gruishka, but no one is interested. Zapan continues to mock ALITA, but he gets his comeuppance when ALITA breaks his nose. ALITA goes on to challenge the rest of the hunter warriors, stating that if she wins, they have to fight alongside her. An almighty barroom brawl breaks out. Tables and chairs are smashed, and soon everyone is fighting each other. The only person not drawn into the fight is McTeague. He and his cyborg hellhounds are happy just to sit and watch the fight. The fight is only broken up when Ido arrives and threatens no more free repairs unless they stop. However, before Ido can tell ALITA off, Gruishka bursts into the bar. Everyone is shocked at Gruishka's huge cyborg body, and he demonstrates his new grind cutter fingers by slicing into a random bar person. When Ido asks for the help of the other hunter warriors, they all refuse because there is no bounty on Gruishka. Ido and ALITA are on their own. Just then, the small dog runs forward and barks at Gruishka, the only one with courage. Everyone is horrified when Gruishka kills the dog, especially McTeague. Gruishka releases his grind cutter fingers and tries to kill ALITA, but ALITA is too fast. Gruishka next tries to kill Ido, but Hugo pulls him out of the way. Frustrated, Gruishka knocks holes in the floor and jumps down into the underworld. He challenges ALITA to follow him, which she does. Down in the sewers, Gruishka battles with ALITA. ALITA gets in a few punches, but Gruishka's grind cutter fingers are too powerful a weapon to overcome, so ALITA mostly has to run and hide. When ALITA tries to land the killer punch, she is cut into pieces by Gruishka's grind cutter fingers. As this happens, a memory is triggered. ALITA remembers her teacher, Gelda, played by Michelle Rodriguez, telling her that Nova is the dragon that must be slain. Gruishka taunts ALITA as he picks up her decapitated body. However, ALITA is not finished. She breaks free, somersaults back, and sticks her remaining fist in Gruishka's eye, accompanied by the immortal line, "Fuck your mercy." By this time, Ido, Hugo, and McTeague have made their way down into the sewers. Working together, they fend Gruishka off and save ALITA. Gruishka retreats, chased by McTeague's cyborg hellhounds. Ido takes ALITA home. He has no other option than to place ALITA's core inside the berserker body. This makes ALITA stronger and faster than she ever was before. The first thing ALITA does is to find Hugo. They share an intimate moment and kiss. ALITA asks if Hugo is bothered that she is not completely human. Hugo replies by saying that ALITA is the most human person he has ever met. After Gruishka's failure, Vector makes other plans to destroy ALITA. He summons Hugo to his office for a drink and a chat about ALITA. Of course, Hugo has no idea that Vector intends to kill ALITA. The next day, Hugo wakes up with a hangover. ALITA arrives and asks Hugo what happened. Hugo explains that Vector has agreed to send him to Zolan when he gets 1,000,000 credits. Hugo only needs 90,000 more to make the trip. Despite wanting to keep Hugo for herself, ALITA is still kind enough to offer to get Hugo the money by working as a hunter warrior. ALITA even takes her heart out of her chest and offers it to Hugo. She suggests that Hugo can sell her heart in order to get the money he needs. But Hugo is not even tempted. He tells ALITA to put her heart back. Later on, Hugo explains Vector's plan. Vector has suggested that ALITA try out for the motorball games. With ALITA's skill, she should be a natural for the game. And with the money ALITA can win, both of them could get to Zolan because the final champion gets to go to Zolan. ALITA agrees if Hugo becomes her coach. An unspecified amount of time later, ALITA is ready for her tryout. Ido gives ALITA new rollerblades, some body armour and a helmet to wear. He also warns ALITA not to wreck her body because he doesn't know how to fix technology. Backstage at the games, Vector meets with the rest of the Motorball players. He offers 500,000 credits to the one that kills ALITA. Before Hugo can get to the game, he tries to stop Tanji jacking another cyborg. He tells Tanji that he is finished with jacking. Tanji doesn't take the rejection well, and he blames ALITA. Hugo and Tanji get into a fight, which is interrupted by Zapan. Zapan informs Hugo that there is a bounty on his head. Hugo is confused because he hasn't killed anyone. In reply, Zapan promptly kills the jacking victim, obviously intent on blaming Hugo for his murder. Zapan grabs Hugo and stabs him in the shoulder. Tanji tries to help, but Zapan slices him in two with his sword. Hugo runs away. Back at the games, ALITA lines up with the rest of the players. However, Ido notices that the players are all hunter warriors or wanted criminals. Ido calls ALITA on his phone to warn her, but it's too late. The game starts, and ALITA has to move or die. ALITA uses her skill to pick each of the other players off one by one. Even the commentator comments that this is more of a fight than a game. When the ball is lost, there is a temporary halt in the game. At this moment, Hugo calls ALITA and explains that Zapan is hunting him. ALITA agrees to meet Hugo at the abandoned church. She bursts out of the stadium through a giant TV screen. Unfortunately, the remaining multiple players follow her and they chase her along the rooftops of Iron City. ALITA uses her skill to avoid being captured and she eventually manages to destroy the other players. ALITA makes it to the abandoned church just in time to save Hugo from being killed by Zapan. However, when ALITA notices that Hugo's picture is shown on a TV screen with a bounty on him, she wants answers. Hugo denies killing anyone, but he admits to jacking cyborgs. Zapan points out that interference between a licensed hunter-warrior and his kill is a violation of factory law and the Hunter's Code. Zapan suggests that if ALITA kills Hugo, she can finally become one of the hunter-warriors. Zapan stabs Hugo before ALITA can stop him. Factory centurions also close in on the church. ALITA picks up Hugo and carries him inside the church. Zapan shouts after ALITA, warning her to finish off Hugo before they do. Inside the church, Hugo tells ALITA that he loves her, and that he is sorry. ALITA holds Hugo in her arms, not sure what to do. Just then Shirin appears. Her cold heart has been turned by what she has seen, and she has a plan. A little later, ALITA leaves the church, and she shows the centurions Hugo's decapitated head. Her kill is confirmed, and Hugo's bounty is awarded. However, Zapan notices that Hugo's head is being fed by tubes connected to ALITA's heart. Zapan starts to struggle with ALITA for Hugo's head, but the centurions mistake this for an attempt to steal Hugo's bounty. ALITA uses this as an excuse to take Zapan's sword and slice off his cyborg face. ALITA walks away with Hugo's head and the sword, unchallenged. The next day, Ido fits Hugo's head onto a cyborg body. Ido also explains that Vector's promise to Hugo was a lie. You can't buy your way to Zolom. Ido knows this because he was born in Zolom. With their daughter's illness, Ido and Shirin were exiled by Nova and forced to descend to Iron City. ALITA understands that she has to kill Nova. She says to Ido, "Thank you, father," and then heads to the factory. ALITA arrives at the factory. She destroys a collection of centurions on the ground floor with her sword before making her way to Vector's office. ALITA accuses Vector of lying when he promised to send Hugo to Zolom. Vector tells ALITA that he always keeps his promise to send people to Zolom. It's just not in the way they expect. Vector shows ALITA that Shirin's hands, brain and heart have been chopped off and stored in a cabinet. Nova demands body parts for his experiments, and that is the only way anyone ever gets to Zolom. Of course, Vector's conversation is a distraction because Gruishka jumps out and stabs ALITA in her side with a grind-cutter finger. This action triggers another memory for ALITA. ALITA remembers racing up the outside of one of the cargo tubes that connects Zolom to the ground. She and her squad of berserkers are decimated by a defence ring that rides down over the top of the tube. The tube breaks apart and most of the berserkers fall to their deaths. ALITA is saved by Gelder, who takes the opportunity to remind ALITA of her mission to destroy Zolom. Renewed with purpose, ALITA turns her attention on Gruishka. She chops off his grind-cutter fingers and then slices Gruishka in half, killing him. ALITA approaches Vector. She demands that Nova speaks to her, which he does. Nova compliments ALITA on defeating Gruishka and turning the selfish Shirin. When Nova threatens Ido and Hugo, ALITA tells him that he has made the biggest mistake of his life. She stabs Vector. As Vector collapses on the floor, Nova reminds ALITA that he sees everything. Vector dies. Ido calls ALITA to inform her that factory enforcers came looking for Hugo. Hugo escaped, but now he's trying to get to Zolom by climbing up one of the cargo tubes. ALITA finds Hugo and pleads with him to come down. Hugo explains that if he comes down, he will always be running. ALITA doesn't care so long as she and Hugo are together. Eventually, Hugo agrees to come down. Unfortunately, this is all too late because Nova releases a defence ring. ALITA jumps and clears it, but Hugo is chopped into pieces. ALITA catches Hugo's arm, but the weight of his body breaks Hugo apart. Before he falls, Hugo thanks ALITA for saving him. ALITA tells Hugo that she loves him. Hugo falls and disappears into the clouds. A few months later, ALITA appears in the Motorball Champions League. Her goal now is to become final champion, go to Zolom and kill Nova. Issues. Please note this review is made without reference to any of the ALITA manga comics or previous animated cartoons. ALITA Battle Angel would be a perfect movie if it weren't for the ending. The most appropriate time to end this movie would have been right after Vector is killed. The fact that the story continues for some months afterward leads to too many issues. Are we expected to believe that Nova would not have been able to kill ALITA or Ido in the months following her visit to the factory? ALITA is guilty of harbouring Hugo and falsely claiming a hunter-warrior bounty. Not only this, she broke into the factory, destroyed several centurions and killed Vector. Why is there no bounty on her? We know how desperately Nova wants ALITA dead. It's almost inconceivable that ALITA would have been able to keep alive and take part in the Motorball games. What sort of society would find it acceptable to take a teenage girl out of her human body and make a soldier out of her? Putting anyone inside a cyborg body neuters them, removing any possibility for them to have children. It's hard not to think of this act as anything other than completely barbaric. I thought the were supposed to be the good guys. Why haven't the returned during the past 300 years? They live on Mars. There must be some of them left. And their technology must also remain. How has Alita's brain survived for 300 years, especially if her brain needs food nourishment to survive? If Alita is 300 years old, why does she still act like a teenager? Why hasn't her brain got any older? Why did Ido's daughter need a full-body cyborg replacement suit if all that were broken were her legs? There didn't seem to be anything wrong with any other part of her body. If Alita is so advanced, why would anyone want to throw her into the junk? And why does everyone want to destroy her if she is so valuable? Surely they should be trying to capture her instead, so they could take her apart and study her technology. If everyone wants to get to Zolom, why hasn't anyone built a flying machine to get there? Surely a simple hang glider could do the job. All you need is a strong wind. Why do Ido and Chirin have to descend to Iron City? Because their daughter was sick? This doesn't make any sense. Zolom would surely have its own medical facilities. Both Ido and Chirin are doctors. Why couldn't their daughter be treated in Zolom? She didn't have anything contagious. If people are expelled from Zolom just because they get sick, then Iron City would be overrun with Zolom dropouts. When Hugo spots Gruishka's grind cutter fingers, he recognises them. It's obvious that Vector and Chirin are behind Gruishka. Yet this fact is conveniently forgotten when Hugo has a drink with Vector. Why is Hugo not suspicious of Vector's interest in Alita? The first time I saw this movie, I was uncomfortable with Alita using the F word. It felt out of character for her to say it. I also imagine some parents with young children would have taken exception to this. Having said this, by the time I saw this movie for the 7th time, this line had become my favourite line in the whole movie. I like the sequence where Hugo shows us his parkour skills, but there are two issues with this. The first issue is that this skill was never set up beforehand. The second issue is that Hugo had an injured shoulder at the time, so his movements would have been greatly reduced. He should have grunted more or shown his disability more clearly. Why is there a 30,000 credit reward for Hugo when all he's allegedly done is kill one man? This reward is 10,000 credits more than the reward offered for the serial killer responsible for the murders of 7 women. It makes no sense for Alita to take on a room of Centurions armed with machine guns, especially as all Alita has is a sword. Alita should have demonstrated a bit more intelligence and found another way into the factory. It did look cool though. As we did not see Hugo actually die, we must presume that he will return in the sequels. If he is not brought back, then this would be a complete tragedy, because so much effort was given to the love story in this movie. Alita is not wearing her berserker suit in the final shot of the movie. A close inspection of her joints proves this. Clearly this is a mistake by the CGI team, because Alita would never take off her berserker suit. P.S. Can we give Nurse Gerhardt some more lines to say in the next movie, please? She was greatly underused. Her role on screen is virtually redundant otherwise. Review. Alita Battle Angel is very nearly a perfect movie. The writing is exceptional. The characters that have been created and the dialogue they have been given is writing at its best. Even the characters that only have a few lines of dialogue or who are only on screen for a brief moment are more compelling than the starring characters found in other movies. There are so many great acting performances in this movie. It's almost unbelievable. Of course, Rosa Salazar steals the show as Alita. She is amazing. What is even more impressive is that her performance had to be captured and transferred to a CGI character. I have never seen such expression given to a CGI character. Technically, this is a game changer. The cinematography by Bill Pope is amazing, and the music by Tom Holkenborg is exceptionally well composed, arranged and produced, capturing the mood of each scene explicitly. This movie is visually spectacular, with amazing effects and thrilling action sequences. Best of all, the movie has a heart, just as strong as the one Alita has in the story. Alita Battle Angel is a technical achievement and an exciting cinematic treat. I cannot wait for the sequels. Congratulations, Robert Rodriguez. This is a masterpiece. My rating, 98%. P.S. Jim Cameron. I've bought the novel, books about the art and the making of Alita, posters, the soundtrack. I'm waiting for the Blu-ray to come out. But where are the toys? Don't you realise how well Alita can translate into toy sales? You could sell more toys than Star Wars. Hi, this is Mike Kendall, and thanks for watching my video. I'd like to know what you thought of this movie. Was it a hit? Was it a flop? Let me know your thoughts and rating in the comments section. You can also tell me what other movies you'd like to see reviews for. Please like and subscribe, and remember to hit that notification bell for all my new videos. Sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter would help me out a lot. I'd sure appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel. We're adding more all the time. I'm off to see a movie. You have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.